Jackson Mercer's shovel struck frozen ground with a sound like splintering bone. 3 years. 3 years since he'd buried his wife and the daughter he never got to hold. 3 years of being dead inside. "Should have been here, Catherine," he whispered to the headstone. "Should have been me instead." That night, a desperate woman knocked on his barn door with 2 starving children. And when the little boy opened his mouth and hummed the lullaby, only Jackson's dead wife knew the melody she'd created for their stillborn daughter. Jackson's frozen world cracked wide open. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. This story will wreck you in the best way. Stay until the end. I promise it's worth it. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. "Jackson, you're gonna kill yourself out here." Jackson Mercer didn't look up, just kept driving the shovel into earth that didn't want to give. Sweat ran down his back despite the Montana cold. "Ground's froze solid," Caleb Stone said, boots crunching through snow as he approached. "You know that. Been trying to plant that rose bush all morning." "She loved roses." "Catherine loved you more, and she wouldn't want you freezing to death in a cemetery." Jackson finally stopped. Looked at his foreman, his friend standing there with concern carved into every weathered line of his 70-year-old face. "What would she want, Caleb, you tell me?" "To see you living again." Jackson laughed bitter. "This is living. Coming here every Sunday, talking to a piece of stone, trying to grow flowers in frozen ground." He gestured at the twin markers. Catherine Mercer, beloved wife. Lily Mercer, born and died February 12, 1885. "This is all I got left." "You got a ranch. You got people who care about you. You got nothing." Jackson threw the shovel down. "I got nothing that matters." Caleb opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes went to the darkening sky instead. "Storm's coming. Bad one. We need to move." Jackson looked up. Clouds rolled in from the north, heavy and mean as a cattle rustler's heart. "Yeah, all right." He picked up the rose bush, still wrapped in burlap, already dying in the cold, and placed it at Catherine's marker. "I'll be back Sunday," he said quietly. The ride back to Broken Creek Ranch took twice as long as it should. Wind drove snow sideways into their faces. By the time the main house appeared through the white, Jackson could barely feel his hands. "Gonna be snowed in for days," Caleb shouted over the wind. "Maybe weeks." Fine by Jackson. Meant no one bothering him. No neighbors with casseroles and pity. No well-meaning widows from town batting their eyes and talking about how it was time to move on. Move on. Like Catherine was a bad investment, he should cut loose. They got the horses settled. Jackson was heading for the house when Caleb grabbed his arm. "Martha left Stu, and she's worried about you. Tell her I'm fine." "You're not fine. You haven't been fine for 3 years." Jackson pulled his arm free. "I'm alive. That's all anyone gets to ask." He climbed the porch steps, stomped snow from his boots, and pushed into warmth that felt like an accusation. The house was too big. Too empty, too full of ghosts. Catherine had designed every room when they'd expanded 5 years back. Extra bedroom for the children they prayed for, bigger kitchen for teaching daughters to cook, wide porch for summer evenings watching sunsets. All those dreams buried now. Jackson ladled stew into a bowl, ate standing at the window, watching the storm devour the world. He was washing his bowl when he heard it, knocking, not at the door, at the barn. Jackson froze, listening. There it was, again, urgent, desperate. Rustlers, maybe. They'd had trouble last spring, or some animal seeking shelter. He grabbed his rifle, pulled on his coat, and stepped into the storm. The cold hit like a fist. He could barely see 10 feet, but he moved toward the barn rifle ready. The knocking came again. Jackson reached the door, raised the rifle, pulled it open. A woman stood there, mid-20s, dark hair plastered to her skull, eyes wide with terror and cold. Behind her 2 children, a girl maybe 7, a boy 5 at most. The boy's feet were wrapped in burlap sacks. "Please," the woman said, voice steady despite teeth chattering. "Can we sleep in your barn? Just tonight. We'll be gone by dawn. We won't steal nothing." Jackson stared. Who the hell traveled with children in a blizzard? The little boy was shaking so hard his whole body vibrated. Jackson stepped back, held the door wider. The woman's eyes widened, surprise relief, suspicion all at once, but she didn't hesitate. Gathered the children and moved past him into the barn. Jackson hung his lantern. The woman was already herding the children to the back stall as far from him as possible while still being in shelter. Smart woman. Didn't know him from Adam. He went to storage, grabbed 3 horse blankets and set them within her reach. Kept his distance. Kept the rifle where she could see it, but not pointed at anyone. "Thank you," she said, wrapping blankets around shivering children. "We'll leave at first light." Jackson looked toward the door where snow was already piling up. "Storm's coming hard. You'll stay till it breaks. We don't want charity." Didn't offer charity. Offered shelter. He met her eyes. Different thing. Something shifted in her face, a tiny relaxation. She nodded once. Jackson turned to go. Then the little boy made a sound that stopped his heart. Humming. Not just any melody. Catherine's lullaby. The song she'd created when she was pregnant. The tune she'd hummed while rubbing her belly. The melody she'd sung while dying with Lily in her arms. A song no one else in the world knew. The rifle slipped from Jackson's hands, clattered on the barn floor. "Sir." The woman was on her feet, alarm sharp in her voice. "What's wrong?" Jackson couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The barn tilted sideways. "Are you hurt? Should I fetch someone? That song." His voice came out hoarse. "Where'd he learn that song?" The woman glanced at the boy, then back to Jackson. "What song?" "The one he's humming." She listened, shook her head. "I don't know. He's hummed it since he was a baby." "Why, Who are you?" Jackson demanded. The woman's jaw set. "No one. We're no one." "Where'd you come from?" "East." "Where you headed?" "West." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." She pulled the children closer. "We'll leave right now if you want. Just say the word." Jackson looked at the boy, still humming, eyes closed. That melody, Catherine's melody, floating through the cold air like a ghost. "The house," Jackson heard himself say. "You should come to the house. We're fine here." "No." His voice was firm now. "You're not. Temperature's dropping. Children won't last the night out here." The woman studied him, weighing options, calculating risks. The little girl coughed deep and rattling. "Very well," the woman said quietly, "but we won't impose more than necessary." Jackson nodded, picked up his rifle, grabbed the lantern. "Can you walk?" he asked the boy. The child nodded, but when he tried to stand, his legs buckled. Jackson didn't think. Just scooped the boy up in one arm. The child was light, too light, bones sharp against Jackson's chest, and that humming continued right against Jackson's ear. They fought through the storm to the house. Jackson kicked the door open. Caleb looked up from the fire shock spreading across his weathered face. "Found them at the barn," Jackson said shortly, setting the boy down. "This is—" He realized he didn't know their names. "Sarah Bennett," the woman said. "These are my siblings, Emma and Thomas." "Caleb Stone." The old foreman recovered quickly. "Let's get you folks warm. Dry clothes in the back room. Food on the stove." While Caleb helped Sarah with the children, Jackson stood at the window, staring at nothing. Thomas. The boy's name was Thomas, and he was humming Catherine's lullaby. Note for note, exactly right. "Jackson," he turned. Caleb stood in the doorway, expression grim. "What the hell is going on?" "Did you hear him?" "Hear what?" "The boy. Humming." Caleb frowned. Can't say I noticed. Why? Jackson shook his head. Nothing. Never mind. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. 20 minutes later, the children were dry and fed. Emma sat at the table, solemn eyes taking in everything. Thomas was already drowsy, curled in a chair, too big for him. Sarah stood by the fire, hands wrapped around Coffee's shoulders, rigid with tension. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Mercer," she said. "We'll leave as soon as the storm passes." "Where you headed?" She hesitated. "Idaho. Got family there." Lie. Jackson saw it in her eyes, but he didn't call her on it. "Long way with 2 children in winter." "We manage." "They your kids." "My siblings. Mother died last year. Father 2 weeks ago." Simple words. But the way she said them, flat, emotionless, told Jackson there was a hell of a lot more to that story. "You're welcome to stay till the weather clears," he said. "Why?" Sarah's eyes met his, direct, challenging. "You don't know us. We could be thieves." "Could be, but you're not." "How do you know?" "Because thieves don't ask permission, and they don't wrap their kids' feet in burlap to save their shoes." Sarah's face flushed. She looked away. "We're not charity cases." "Didn't say you were." Jackson moved to the stove, poured himself coffee. "I'm offering shelter. What you do with it is your business." She was quiet a long moment. Then, "Thank you, Jackson." The sound of his name in her voice did something strange to his chest. He nodded and retreated to his bedroom, leaned against the closed door, breathing hard. What the hell was happening? 3 years of being dead inside. 3 years of going through motions. And now there was a woman in his kitchen, and children in Catherine's room, and one of those children was humming the song that should have been Lily's. Jackson moved to the window, stared at the storm. "Catherine," he whispered, "is this you?" The wind howled. No answer, no forgiveness. But somewhere in the house, Thomas was humming, and Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that nothing, absolutely nothing, happened by accident. He woke to voices. Jackson sat up, disoriented. Gray dawn light filtered through his window. The storm had passed. Then he smelled it. Coffee, bacon, bread. Scents he hadn't experienced in his own home for 3 years. He dressed quickly and emerged to find Sarah at his stove, cooking with brisk efficiency. The children sat at the table, Emma reading an old book. She must have found Thomas watching Jackson with those 2 old eyes. "Morning," Sarah said without turning. "Hope you don't mind. Thought I'd earn our keep." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Her voice was iron wrapped in velvet. "I don't take without giving back." Jackson recognized that pride. Had worn it himself when he was young and building this ranch from nothing. "Coffee's appreciated," he said. He poured a cup and sat. Emma gave him a shy glance and went back to her book. But Thomas stared at him with an intensity that made Jackson's skin crawl. "Mr. Jackson," the boy said suddenly. "Just Jackson." "Jackson, did you know my mama?" Sarah turned sharply from the stove. "Thomas, don't—" "It's all right," Jackson said, though his pulse hammered. "No, son, I didn't know your mama." "Why?" Thomas tilted his head, considering. "Because last night I dreamed about the lady who sings." The kitchen went dead silent. "What lady?" Sarah's voice was tight. "The one with the yellow hair like sunshine. She sings the magic song." His dark eyes fixed on Jackson. "She told me you're sad because your baby died. She said her baby's name was Lily." The coffee cup slipped from Jackson's hand, shattered on the floor. Sarah was already moving, grabbing Thomas, pulling both children behind her. "We'll go, right now. I'm sorry. I don't know what he's—" "No." Jackson stood, hands shaking. "Don't go." "Mr. Mercer, I don't know what's happening, but my wife's name was Catherine." The words ripped out of him. She had blonde hair, She died 3 years ago, giving birth to our daughter. Lily. Sarah went pale. The song your brother hums, my wife created it. For our baby. No one else knew that song. No one. That's not possible. No, it's not. They stared at each other across the broken cup, the spilled coffee, the impossible truth hanging between them. The lady said something else, Thomas whispered. Everyone looked at him. She said the song is magic that connects hearts together, even when they're far apart. He looked at Jackson. She said you need us, and we need you. That's how family works. Jackson felt his knees buckle, gripped the table edge. Mr. Mercer, Sarah's voice was softer now. Are you all right? I don't know. Jackson looked at her, really looked at her, saw the fear beneath the strength, the exhaustion beneath the pride, the bruise on her forearm she thought no one noticed. Who are you running from? He asked quietly. Sarah's face went white. I don't know what. Yes, you do. You're running. With 2 children. In a blizzard. Nobody does that unless they're desperate. He paused. Or scared. She was trembling now. Please. Don't ask questions I can't answer. Can't or won't. Does it matter? Yeah, it does. The door burst open. Caleb stood there, snow-covered, breathing hard. Jackson, we got trouble. What kind of trouble? Riders. 3 of them. Coming from the east. Moving fast. Sarah made a sound like a wounded animal. No, not yet. They couldn't have found us yet. Who? Jackson demanded. Who's coming? Sarah grabbed the children, shoved them toward the back room. Hide. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Sarah. Now, Emma. The girl grabbed Thomas and ran. Sarah turned to Jackson, and for the first time he saw pure terror in her eyes. His name is Victor Blackwood. He's a land speculator, a moneylender, a monster. Her voice shook. My father owed him money. When Papa couldn't pay, Blackwood offered a deal. Me. In exchange for the debt. Jackson's blood went cold. Your father agreed. My father refused. They found him hanging in our barn the next morning. Her jaw clenched. They called it suicide. But you don't believe that. I know what I heard the night before. I know what Blackwood said. One way or another, I get what's mine. She looked toward the back room where the children hid. Thomas saw them arguing, saw Blackwood hit Papa. He's the only witness. Understanding crashed over Jackson. So Blackwood wants him dead. He wants all of us. Me because I'm his property. The children because they're witnesses. And now, her voice broke, now he'll kill you too, for helping us. Let him try. Jackson, you don't understand. He owns the sheriff, the judge, half the county. He's untouchable. Maybe in your county. Jackson moved to the gun cabinet, started loading rifles. But this is Montana territory, and on my land I'm the law. Caleb was already checking his shotgun. Been a while since I had a good fight. You two are insane, Sarah's voice rose. There's 3 of them out there, armed, dangerous, and you're protecting what's mine, Jackson said simply. We're not yours to protect. Jackson turned to face her. Then what are you? The question hung in the air. Sarah opened her mouth, closed it. No answer came. That's what I thought. Jackson handed her a rifle. You know how to use this. I'm a woman, not an invalid. Of course I know. Good. Stay inside. Protect the children. If things go bad... They won't, Caleb interrupted. Because we're meaner than we look. Jackson almost smiled. That we are, old man. That we are. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder. Jackson checked his pistol, loaded extra rounds. Looked at Sarah one more time. When this is over, we're gonna talk. About that song. About your father. About why a 4-year-old boy dreams about my dead wife. His voice softened. About why you're the first thing I've cared about in 3 years. Sarah's eyes widened. But there was no time for more. The hoofbeats stopped. Someone pounded on the door. "Open up, Mercer. We know you got our property in there." Jackson looked at Caleb. The old man nodded. Jackson opened the door. 3 men stood on his porch. The one in front was tall, silver-haired, dressed too fine for ranch country. Cold eyes, colder smile. "Victor Blackwood," the man said smoothly. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Don't recall taking anything," Jackson replied. "And I'm damn sure nothing on my property belongs to you." The girl, Sarah Bennett, and the brats she kidnapped. Kidnapped. Jackson's voice was ice. Those are her siblings. Not according to the law. Her father's debts transferred to me upon his death. That includes guardianship rights. That's not how guardianship works. It is when you own the judge. Blackwood's smile widened. "Now I'll give you one chance. Send them out. No one gets hurt. And if I refuse, then I burn this ranch to the ground with everyone in it." Behind Jackson, he heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath. Jackson studied Blackwood, saw the truth in those cold eyes. This man would do exactly what he threatened. "Tell you what," Jackson said slowly. "How about we discuss this like civilized men over coffee? Inside." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm stupid? I think you're smart enough to know that burning a ranch brings questions. Marshals, federal investigators." Jackson leaned against the doorframe casual. "But a gentleman's agreement, a business transaction, that's different." He could see Blackwood calculating. The man wanted Sarah, that was clear. But he also wanted legitimacy, wanted to maintain his respectable facade. "Very well," Blackwood said finally, "but my men stay armed. Wouldn't have it any other way." Jackson stepped back. Let them enter. It was the biggest gamble of his life. And as Blackwood crossed the threshold with his hired guns behind him, as Sarah pressed herself against the far wall with murder in her eyes, as Thomas's humming drifted from the back room, that impossible, beautiful, devastating melody, Jackson Mercer made a choice. These strangers, this broken woman and these traumatized children, they were his now. His to protect. His to fight for. His to die for, if it came to that. Because Catherine had sent them. He believed that now. Sent them through her song in Thomas's dreams. Sent them to wake him up. To make him live again. And he'd be damned if he'd let some murdering loan shark take them away. "Coffee." Jackson offered, Blackwood voice pleasant as Sunday church. "Don't mind if I do." The game was on, and Jackson Mercer, the broken rancher who'd been dead inside for 3 years, was all in. The coffee pot sat between them like a loaded gun. Jackson poured 3 cups, his movements deliberate and slow. Blackwood's men flanked the door hands resting on their pistols. Caleb stood by the fireplace, shotgun cradled casual in his arms. Sarah had pressed herself into the corner, eyes darting between Blackwood and the back room where the children hid. "Nice place you got here, Mercer," Blackwood said, settling into Jackson's chair like he owned it. "Here you run cattle, profitable operation." "Profitable enough. Must get lonely, though. Big house like this. No wife, no children." Blackwood's smile was all teeth. "Tragic thing losing family. Makes a man vulnerable." Jackson's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "What exactly do you want, Blackwood?" "What's mine? Simple as that." "The girl says she's not yours." "The girl is confused. Grief does that to people. You'd know all about that, wouldn't you?" Blackwood sipped his coffee. "Her father signed papers before he died. Legal documents transferring guardianship of the children to me. As for Sarah, well, she agreed to our arrangement of her own free will." "That's a lie." Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. I never agreed to nothing. Careful, darling. Hysterics won't help your case. Blackwood didn't even look at her. You see, Mercer, this is what I'm dealing with. An unstable woman making wild accusations. A burden to herself and those poor children. Then why do you want her? Jackson asked quietly. Civic duty. Someone has to look after the unfortunate. Blackwood's eyes glittered. And I'm a generous man. I'm willing to forgive the debt, provide for the children, give Sarah a respectable position as my wife. Most women would be grateful for such an opportunity. From the back room came a sound that made everyone freeze. Thomas humming. That same melody, clear and sweet and impossible. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. What is that? Just a child's song, Jackson said. Tell the boy to stop, it's irritating. He's 4 years old and scared. I'm not telling him nothing. Blackwood's pleasant mask slipped for just a moment. Something cold and ugly flashed across his face. You're making a mistake, Mercer. Interfering in affairs that don't concern you. See, that's where you're wrong. Jackson leaned forward. Anything that happens on my land concerns me. And those 3 people, they're under my protection now. Your protection? Blackwood laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you can protect them? You who couldn't even protect your own wife. The room went dead silent. Caleb's knuckles went white on the shotgun. Sarah's breath caught. And Jackson felt something break open inside him, something that had been frozen for 3 years. Get out, he said quietly. I don't think so. Not without what I came for. I said get out. Jackson stood, hand dropping to his pistol. You got 10 seconds before I throw you out. Blackwood didn't move. Kill me and you'll hang. My men will testify you murdered me in cold blood. The law won't protect you. Maybe not. But I'll die knowing you didn't get them. For a long moment, Blackwood stared at Jackson, calculating, measuring. Then he smiled. You love her. What? The girl. You love her. I can see it in your eyes. Blackwood stood brushing off his coat. That's why you're being foolish. Because you think if you save her, it'll somehow make up for not saving your wife. You don't know nothing about my wife. I know she died because you weren't there. I know you live with that guilt every day. Blackwood moved toward the door, his men parting to let him through. And I know that guilt makes you weak. He paused at the threshold, looked back at Sarah. I'll give you 3 days, darling. 3 days to come to your senses and return what you stole. After that, I stop being civilized. His eyes shifted to Jackson. And everyone who helped you dies, starting with the children. Then he was gone, boots thudding across the porch, hoofbeats fading into the distance. Jackson stood frozen until the sound disappeared completely. Then his legs gave out. He sank into the chair, hands shaking. Jackson. Caleb's voice was gentle. You all right, son? No, I'm not all right. Jackson looked at Sarah. What the hell did I just do? You saved us. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why? I don't know. Yes, you do. Sarah moved closer, knelt beside his chair. Tell me why. Jackson met her eyes. Gray-green like winter sky filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. Because Thomas dreams about my wife. Because he hums her song. Because when I look at you I feel something I thought died 3 years ago. He shook his head. Because I'm tired of being dead inside. Sarah's hand found his squeeze tight. He'll kill you. You know that, right? Blackwood doesn't make threats he won't keep. Let him try. Jackson. No. His voice was firm now. I made my choice. I'm not backing down. The backroom door cracked open. Emma peeked out, her small face pale with fear. Is the bad man gone? He's gone, sweetheart, Sarah said, but her eyes never left Jackson's. For now. Thomas appeared behind his sister, still humming. He walked straight to Jackson, climbed into his lap like he'd done it 1,000 times before. The lady said you'd protect us, Thomas said. She said you're brave like the bears in winter. They look dead, but they're just sleeping, waiting for spring. Jackson's throat closed up. What else did she say? That love doesn't die. It just waits for the right time to wake up. Thomas looked up at him with those two old eyes. Are you awake now, Mr. Jackson? Before Jackson could answer, Caleb cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but we got problems. Blackwood's gonna come back, and when he does, he's bringing more than 3 men. I know. So what's the plan? Jackson looked at Sarah, at the children, at the broken coffee cups still scattered on his floor. We fight. 3 of us against how many? Caleb shook his head. I'm good, but I ain't that good. Then we get help. From who? Nearest town's 15 miles, and you know half those folks are in Blackwood's pocket. Not everyone. Jackson stood, settling Thomas on his hip. The boy immediately rested his head on Jackson's shoulder, still humming. There's people who owe me favors. Good people. We call them in. That'll take time, Sarah said. Blackwood gave us 3 days. Then we better move fast. Jackson looked at Caleb. Can you ride to town? Talk to Reverend Pierce, Judge Harrison if she's back from Helena. Anyone who'll listen. What about you? I'm staying here. Someone's got to protect them. Caleb studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But Jackson, don't do nothing stupid while I'm gone. Stupid's all I got left, old man. After Caleb left the house, fell into uneasy quiet. Sarah busied herself cleaning up the broken coffee cups. Emma sat at the table turning pages in her book without reading. Thomas had fallen asleep in Jackson's arms, that melody still humming softly even in sleep. Jackson carried the boy to the bedroom Catherine had prepared, laid him gently on the bed. The child barely stirred, just curled on his side, and kept humming. When Jackson returned to the main room, Sarah was standing at the window, arms wrapped around herself. I'm sorry, she said without turning. I brought this on you. Should have kept moving. Should have never stopped. Then you'd be dead in a snowbank somewhere. Better than getting you killed. Jackson moved to stand beside her. Outside, the world was white and clean, like the storm had wiped everything away and started fresh. Tell me about your father, he said quietly. Sarah was quiet so long Jackson thought she wouldn't answer. Then, he was a blacksmith. Good man mostly. Worked hard. Loved us. She paused. But he had weaknesses. Gambling. Drink. When Mama died, those weaknesses got worse. How'd he get involved with Blackwood? Crop failure 2 years ago. We needed money to get through winter. Blackwood offered a loan. Papa thought he could pay it back. Her laugh was bitter. But Blackwood didn't want it paid back. He wanted collateral. You. Me. Sarah's jaw clenched. Papa refused at first, told Blackwood to go to hell, but the interest kept piling up. The threats got worse, and then one night Blackwood came to our house. Jackson waited. I was upstairs with the children. I heard them arguing. Heard Blackwood say, "You give me the girl or I take everything. Your land, your shop, your life." Papa said no. Said he'd never hand over his daughter like livestock. Her voice broke. I heard something hit the floor. Something heavy. Then Blackwood's voice, real quiet. Accidents happen, Robert, especially to men who don't pay their debts. Thomas saw it. Thomas was supposed to be asleep, but he snuck down to the loft, watched the whole thing through the floorboards. Sarah wiped her eyes. Next morning they found Papa hanging in the barn. Sheriff ruled it suicide. Case closed. But you knew better. I knew Blackwood killed him. Knew he'd come for us next. So we ran. She turned to face Jackson. And now I've brought that evil to your doorstep. Jackson reached out, cupped her face in his hand. She flinched at first, then leaned into the touch like she was starving for gentleness. You didn't bring nothing but life back into this house, he said. First time in 3 years I've felt something other than grief. First time I've had a reason to fight. A reason to care. Jackson. Let me finish. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I don't know what's happening here. Don't know why Thomas knows Catherine's song or why he dreams about her. Maybe it's divine providence. Maybe it's just coincidence. But I know this. I'm not letting Blackwood take you. Not now. Not ever. You barely know me. I know enough. Sarah's eyes searched his face. What do you know? I know you're brave. I know you put those children before yourself every single time. I know you'd rather die than go back to Blackwood. He paused. And I know that when I look at you, I feel alive again. And that scares the hell out of me. Why does it scare you? Because everyone I love dies. The truth hung between them raw and bleeding. Sarah's hand came up to cover his. I'm not her Jackson. I'm not Catherine. I know. And I can't replace what you lost. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Jackson pulled her closer until their foreheads touched. I'm asking you to let me fight for you. I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to stay. For how long? As long as you'll have me. Sarah's breath hitched. That's a dangerous promise to make to a woman with a monster on her trail. I've been dead for 3 years. Dangerous sounds pretty good right now. She laughed, the sound broken and beautiful. Then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was desperate and scared and hungry all at once. Jackson pulled her against him, felt her shake in his arms, tasted salt from tears neither of them acknowledged. When they broke apart, Sarah was trembling. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Don't know how to let someone in. Don't know how to trust. Neither do I. Guess we'll figure it out together. A sound from the bedroom made them both turn. Emma stood in the doorway, eyes wide. Is Thomas okay? Sarah asked, immediately shifting into caretaker mode. He's still humming in his sleep. But Miss Sarah... Emma's voice was small. Are we really staying for real this time? Sarah looked at Jackson. He nodded. Yeah, sweetheart. I think we are. Emma's face crumpled. She ran to Sarah, buried her face in her sister's skirt, and sobbed. Not sad crying, but the kind of tears that come when you've been holding on too tight for too long, and finally feel safe enough to let go. Sarah sank to the floor, pulled Emma into her lap, and rocked her. It's okay, baby. We're safe now. We're home. Home. The word echoed in Jackson's chest like a church bell. This broken woman and these traumatized children, they were home now. His home. His family. God help anyone who tried to take them away. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Caleb returned from town with news. Reverend Pierce was gathering support. Judge Harrison was due back from Helena any day. And the townspeople were divided, some in Blackwood's pocket, others willing to stand against him. It's not enough, Caleb said grimly. Blackwood's got money and influence. We got morals and hope. Hope's gotten people through worse, Jackson replied. They fortified the ranch as best they could, moved ammunition closer, positioned rifles by windows, planned escape routes. Jackson taught Sarah to shoot properly, and she proved a quick study. Where'd you learn? He asked after she put 3 shots in the center of a target. Papa said every woman should know how to protect herself. Her smile was sad. Guess he was right. Emma and Thomas stayed close to the house, sensing the adults' tension even if they didn't understand it fully. Thomas kept humming his song, and Jackson found himself humming along sometimes without realizing it. On the 3rd morning, Emma asked Jackson a question that nearly broke him. If we stay here forever, can I call you Papa? Jackson knelt down to her level. You can call me anything you want, sweetheart. Even Papa. Especially Papa. Emma threw her arms around his neck and squeezed tight. Over her shoulder, Jackson saw Sarah watching, tears streaming down her face. That afternoon, Thomas wandered into Jackson's workshop where he was sharpening tools. Mr. Jackson, can I ask you something? Sure, son. The lady with the yellow hair. She said something else in my dream. Jackson's hands stilled. What'd she say? She said you think it's your fault she died, but it's not. Thomas climbed onto the workbench swinging his legs. She said she doesn't blame you. She just wants you to be happy again. Jackson's vision blurred. Thomas, I wasn't there when she needed me most. She knows. But she said love means letting go so the people we love can keep living. The boy reached out, patted Jackson's hand with his small one. She said to tell you she forgives you, and you should forgive yourself. Jackson pulled the boy into a fierce hug, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd held back for 3 years. Thomas just patted his back and hummed that melody, that impossible beautiful song that connected the dead to the living. When Jackson finally pulled himself together, he saw Sarah standing in the doorway. How long have you been there? He asked roughly. Long enough. She moved closer. Jackson, what Thomas said. I know, I heard him. Do you believe it? That Catherine's really talking to him? Jackson looked at the boy, at those innocent eyes, and that old soul. Yeah, I think I do. Then maybe, Sarah said slowly, maybe this is all happening for a reason. Maybe we were meant to find each other. You believe in fate. I believe in miracles. And you're mine. Before Jackson could respond, a shout from outside made them all freeze. Riders coming, lots of them. They ran to the window. Caleb was right, at least a dozen men on horseback approaching fast from the east. Blackwood was back, and he'd brought an army. Jackson grabbed his rifle. Sarah, take the children to the cellar. Stay there no matter what you hear. Jackson, no. Do it! His voice was harsh with fear. Please, I can't protect you and fight them at the same time. Sarah grabbed the children, but Emma pulled away, ran to Jackson and hugged him tight. Don't die, Papa. Please don't die. The word Papa from her lips nearly undid him. I won't, sweetheart. I promise. It was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Sarah herded the children toward the cellar, but at the door she turned back. Jackson, I love you. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you. Then she was gone, the cellar door closing behind her. Jackson stood in his empty house, rifle in hand, and realized he'd just found everything he thought he'd lost. And now he had to fight like hell to keep it. Caleb appeared at his side, shotgun ready. Well, this is gonna be interesting. That's one word for it. Got any brilliant plans? Try not to die. That's it? That's your plan. Jackson chambered around. You got something better? Nope. Try not to die it is. The rider stopped just outside rifle range. Blackwood sat in front, that same cold smile on his face. Time's up, Mercer, he shouted. Send out the girl and the brat's last chance. Jackson stepped onto the porch, rifle loose in his hands. Can't do that, Blackwood. Then you're all dead men. Maybe. But you'll be the first to go. I got a rifle pointed at your head right now. You think your men'll keep fighting after I blow your brains out? Blackwood's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment nobody moved. Then Blackwood raised his hand, signaling his men to hold. You're making a mistake, Mercer. You can't win this. Don't have to win, just have to last long enough. Long enough for what? As if in answer, more riders appeared. But these came from the west, and at their head rode Judge Margaret Harrison with Reverend Pierce beside her and 20 armed townspeople behind them. What the hell is this? Blackwood shouted. Judge Harrison rode forward, her voice carrying across the yard. This is the law, Mr. Blackwood, the real law, not the bought and paid for version you're used to. This is none of your concern, Your Honor. Murder is always my concern, and I have witness testimony that you killed Robert Bennett. Blackwood's face went white. That's a lie. Is it? The judge pulled out a document. I have a sworn statement from a Mrs. Dorothy Chen. She heard you threaten Mr. Bennett the night he died, and I have testimony from a 4-year-old boy who saw you strike him. The word of a child means nothing. It does when corroborated by other witnesses. I also have statements from 3 of your previous debtors, all claiming you threatened their lives, all too afraid to speak up until now. Blackwood's men were shifting nervously now, glancing at each other. You have no authority here, Blackwood snarled. I'm a federal judge. I have authority everywhere. Harrison's voice was steel. Now you can come quietly and face trial, or you can resist and prove every accusation against you. Your choice. For a moment, Jackson thought Blackwood would fight. Saw it in his eyes, the calculation, the rage, the desperate need to win. Then Blackwood's hand dropped to his gun. No! Jackson shouted. But it was too late. Blackwood drew, and Caleb's shotgun roared. Blackwood flew backward off his horse, hit the ground hard, and didn't move. His men froze hands away from their weapons. Anyone else want to dance? Caleb shouted, already reloading. Nobody moved. Judge Harrison rode forward, dismounted, and checked Blackwood's body. After a moment, she looked up. He's alive. Barely. Someone get the doctor. She turned to Blackwood's men. The rest of you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. Drop your weapons. They did, every one of them. It was over. Jackson's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the porch steps, rifle clattering beside him. Caleb sat next to him. Well, that went better than expected. You shot him. He drew first. You saw it. Yeah, I saw it. They sat in silence, watching the judge's men round up Blackwood's crew. Then the cellar door burst open, and Sarah came running, children in her wake. She threw herself into Jackson's arms, sobbing. You're alive. You're alive. I'm alive. Jackson held her tight, breathed in the scent of her hair, felt her heart pounding against his chest. We all are. Thomas tugged on Jackson's sleeve. The lady said you'd be okay. She said the bad man can't hurt us anymore. Jackson pulled the boy into the embrace then. Emma. They sat there on this porch, 4 broken people, holding each other together, while the law cleaned up the pieces of Victor Blackwood's evil empire. Judge Harrison approached, her stern face softened slightly. Mr. Mercer, Miss Bennett, I need statements from both of you, and from the boy. Yes, ma'am, Jackson said. But can it wait till tomorrow? We've had a long day. The judge looked at them, at Sarah, clutching Jackson like he might disappear, at the children pressed against him, at the family they'd somehow become. Tomorrow will be fine, she said quietly. Take your time. As the sun set on Broken Creek Ranch, Jackson sat on his porch with his new family, watching the world turn gold and orange. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now. Jackson kissed the top of her head. Now we live. Just like that? Just like that. Thomas started humming again. That melody, Catherine's melody, floating on the evening air like a blessing. And Jackson realized something. The song wasn't about grief anymore. It was about hope, about second chances, about hearts that freeze in winter but thaw in spring. Catherine had given him that song as a gift for their daughter. And now, through some miracle he'd never understand, it had brought him a new family. 3 strangers who'd knocked on his barn door and changed everything. Thank you, Catherine, he whispered to the sky. Thank you for sending them to me. The wind whispered back, gentle and warm. And somewhere in that space between memory and miracle, Jackson could have sworn he heard his wife's voice. Live, Jackson. Love them. Be happy. He intended to do exactly that. The next morning came soft and quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Jackson woke to find Sarah already gone from the chair where she'd fallen asleep watching the children. He found her in the kitchen, hands wrapped around coffee, staring at nothing. Didn't sleep much, he said, pouring his own cup. Couldn't. Keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's over, Sarah. Blackwood's in custody. His men talked. Judge Harrison says the case is solid. Nothing's ever really over. She looked at him, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Men like Blackwood always have friends, people who owe them favors. What if someone comes looking for revenge? Jackson sat across from her, took her hands in his. Then we deal with it. Together. You keep saying that word. Together. Like it's simple. Isn't it? Sarah laughed, bitter and broken. Jackson, you don't know me. Not really. You don't know the things I've done to keep those children alive, the lies I've told, the people I've hurt. Don't matter. Yes, it does. You're talking about forever with a woman you met 4 days ago. A woman who brought killers to your door. A woman who'd die for those children. Jackson interrupted quietly. A woman brave enough to run into a blizzard rather than give up. A woman who looks at me like I'm worth saving. He squeezed her hands. That's all I need to know. You're crazy. Yeah, probably. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm too broken? Then we'll be broken together. Jackson stood, pulled her into his arms. Sarah, I've been dead for 3 years. You made me want to live again. That's worth everything. She buried her face in his chest, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jackson held her, rocked her, let her cry out 3 years of running and fear and exhaustion. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy but calmer. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Don't know how to be someone's wife. My mama died when I was 16. I've been raising those children alone ever since. Good thing I don't know how to be someone's husband anymore. We'll figure it out as we go. Is that a proposal, Jackson Mercer? He blinked, realizing what he'd just implied. I mean... Sarah laughed, real and genuine this time. Relax, I'm not holding you to it. Not yet, anyway. Not yet. Ask me again in a month, when you know what you're getting into. Fair enough, Jackson thought. But he already knew. Knew it the moment Thomas hummed Catherine's song. Knew it when Emma called him Papa. Knew it when Sarah kissed him like he was her last hope. He was already in. All the way. The sound of small feet on the stairs announced Thomas, followed by Emma rubbing sleep from her eyes. Morning, Papa, Emma said, and Jackson's heart squeezed tight every single time. Morning, sweetheart. You hungry? Starving. Miss Sarah, can we have pancakes? Sarah wiped her eyes quickly, forcing a smile. Pancakes it is. While Sarah cooked, Jackson sat with the children at the table. Thomas climbed into his lap without asking permission, still humming that melody. Thomas, Jackson said gently, can I ask you something about the lady who sings? The boy nodded solemn. Does she still come to you in your dreams? Sometimes. Not as much now. Why not? Thomas tilted his head, considering. She says she doesn't need to anymore. Says you're awake now. Says her job is done. Jackson felt his throat close up. Did she say anything else? She said to tell you something important. Thomas looked up at him with those 2 old eyes. She said the song was always meant for more than one baby. She made it for lots of babies. Yours and hers and mine and Emma's and all the ones that come after. All the ones that come after, Jackson repeated softly. From the stove, Sarah's hand stilled on the spatula. She said love doesn't end when people die, Thomas continued. It just grows bigger and bigger until it holds everyone who needs it, like a blanket that keeps getting more pieces sewn on. Emma leaned against Jackson's shoulder. I like that. A blanket made of love. Me too, baby girl. Me too. After breakfast, there was a knock at the door. Jackson tensed hand going to his gun, but it was just Reverend Pierce with Judge Harrison. Morning, folks, the Reverend said, hat in hand. Hope we're not intruding. Not at all. Come in. The judge got straight to business. Mr. Mercer, Miss Bennett, I need those statements today. Blackwood's regained consciousness, and he's already demanding a lawyer. I want everything documented before his people start trying to twist the truth. Sarah's face went pale. Do I have to see him? No, ma'am. You can give your statement here, but I will need to speak with the boy. Judge Harrison's expression softened. I know it's difficult, but his testimony is crucial. He's 4 years old, Sarah protested. You can't put him through that. I'll be as gentle as possible, but Miss Bennett, without his testimony, Blackwood might walk. Jackson stood. I'll be with him, every second. The judge nodded. That's acceptable. They set up in the main room. Reverend Pierce stayed with Emma while the judge questioned Thomas. The boy sat on Jackson's lap, small and brave, and told his story in a clear, steady voice that broke Jackson's heart. I was in the loft, Thomas said. Papa didn't know I was there. I heard the bad man yelling. He said Papa had to give him Miss Sarah or he'd take everything. Papa said no, said Sarah wasn't property. What happened then? Judge Harrison asked gently. The bad man hit Papa, real hard. Papa fell down and didn't get up for a long time. Thomas's voice wavered. I was scared. I wanted to help, but Miss Sarah told me to never go down when Papa had business with men. So I stayed hidden. Did you see what happened after your father fell? Thomas nodded. The bad man leaned down and said something real quiet. I couldn't hear it all, but I heard him say, accidents happen to men who don't pay. Then he left. And your father? He got up after a while, but he was crying. Papa never cried. Thomas looked at Sarah. I should have told you. Should have said something. Sarah pulled him from Jackson's lap into her arms. No, baby. No, this isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. But if I'd told, then Blackwood would have killed you too, Sarah said fiercely. You did exactly right by staying quiet. You kept yourself safe. That's what Papa would have wanted. Judge Harrison cleared her throat. Thomas, one more question. The next morning when they found your father in the barn, do you remember anything unusual? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then, the rope was wrong. Everyone went still. What do you mean, son? Jackson asked. Papa taught me knots, for horses and fixing things. The knot on the rope in the barn wasn't one Papa knew. It was different. Fancy. The judge and Reverend exchanged glances. Would you recognize it if you saw it again? The judge asked. Yes, ma'am. Judge Harrison stood. Reverend, I need you to ride to Pine Creek. Find out what kind of knots Blackwood uses on his horses, his equipment, everything. If we can match that knot, we can prove he was there, the Reverend finished. I'll leave within the hour. After they left, Sarah held Thomas for a long time, rocking him like he was a baby again. You were so brave, she whispered. So brave, little man. Did I help Will the bad man go away forever now? Yes, baby, I think he will. But her eyes met Jackson's over Thomas's head, and he saw the doubt there. The fear that Blackwood's money and influence would find a way out. The terror that she'd never really be safe. Jackson made a decision right then. He stood, went to his bedroom, and came back with a small wooden box. Inside was a ring, simple gold band with a small sapphire. This was my grandmother's, he said, kneeling in front of Sarah. Then my mother's. Then Catherine's. And now, he took a breath. Now, I'm asking if it can be yours. Sarah stared at him, mouth open. Jackson, you said to ask in a month. I changed my mind. Sarah Bennett, will you marry me? Will you let me be a father to these children? Will you build a life with me on this ranch and grow old watching sunsets and fighting over who gets the last piece of pie? Jackson. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other, but I also know that I love you. Love these children. And life's too short to wait for the perfect moment. He held up the ring. So what do you say? Will you take a chance on a broken-down rancher who talks to ghosts? Sarah laughed through her tears. You're insane. Is that a yes? It's a ye. She looked at the children, at Emma's hopeful face, and Thomas's solemn nod. It's a yes. God help me, it's a yes. Jackson slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like it was meant to be there all along. Emma squealed and threw herself at them. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" "We were always a real family, sweetheart," Jackson said, pulling her into the embrace. "Now we're just making it official." Thomas started humming his song again, but this time Jackson heard it differently. Not as grief, but as joy. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Word spread through town about the engagement, and folks Jackson barely knew showed up with gifts and good wishes. Martha Stone cried happy tears and immediately started planning a wedding. "Small ceremony," Sarah insisted. "Just close friends." "Honey, half the county wants to celebrate," Martha said. "Especially after what you all went through. People love a happy ending." Sarah looked at Jackson, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to do this. Never had a real wedding. Mama and Papa just went to the courthouse." "Then we'll figure it out together," Jackson said. "Whatever you want, that's what we'll do." Why? What Sarah wanted, it turned out, was simple. A ceremony at the ranch, Reverend Pierce officiating just family and close friends. Martha could bake a cake. Emma could pick wildflowers. Thomas could stand with Jackson as his best man. "He's 4 years old," Caleb protested when Jackson told him. "I'm supposed to be your best man. Been knowing you since before you could walk. And you'll stand up there too. But Thomas needs to know he's important. Needs to feel like he's part of this." Caleb grumbled, but agreed. "You gone soft in your old age, Jackson Mercer." "Yeah, I have." 3 days before the wedding, Reverend Pierce returned from Pine Creek with news. His face was grim as he rode up to the ranch. "Found your proof," he said, dismounting. "Blackwood uses a specific kind of knot, taught to him by his father, who was a sailor. It's called a hangman's noose, but modified, very distinctive." "And?" Jackson prompted. "And it matches the knot that killed Robert Bennett exactly." The Reverend pulled out sketches. "I had 3 different witnesses confirm it. Blackwood's stable hand, his housekeeper, and a man who used to work his ranch." Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. "So he really did it? He really killed Papa?" "Yes, ma'am. And Judge Harrison says with this evidence plus Thomas's testimony, Blackwood's going away for a long time, maybe forever." Relief crashed over Sarah so hard she nearly fell. Jackson caught her, held her up. "It's over," he said quietly. "Really over this time." "I can't believe it. After all this time running, hiding, you're free." Jackson cupped her face. "You're safe. You're home." Sarah kissed him, then hard and desperate and grateful. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "Home. Yeah. I like the sound of that." The wedding day dawned clear and warm, the first real hint that spring was coming. Snow still covered the ground, but the air smelled different, softer, full of promise. Martha had transformed the main room with wildflowers and candles. Caleb grumbled about fussing, but Jackson saw him wipe his eyes when he thought no one was looking. Emma wore a new dress that Martha had sewn, and Thomas had been scrubbed within an inch of his life, his hair slicked back with water. Sarah emerged from the bedroom, wearing a simple white dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She looked terrified and beautiful and perfect. Jackson couldn't breathe. "You clean up nice, Mercer," Caleb said gruffly. "Shut up, old man. Make me." They stood at the front of the room, surrounded by everyone who mattered. Reverend Pierce opened his Bible, but before he could speak, Thomas tugged on Jackson's sleeve. "Papa, can I say something first?" Jackson nodded, throat tight. Thomas turned to face the small gathering. "The lady with the yellow hair came to me again last night. She said to tell everyone that love doesn't end when people die. It just makes room for new love. And she said," he looked at Jackson, "she said she's happy, that you found Miss Sarah, that she picked her special for you." The room went silent. Several people were openly crying now. Sarah knelt down to Thomas's level. "She picked me." "Yes, ma'am. She said she looked real hard for someone brave enough to love Papa, even though he's grumpy sometimes. Jackson let out a surprised laugh. Grumpy? That's what she said. Thomas shrugged. But she also said you're the best papa in the whole world. And now you get to be mine for real. Sarah pulled Thomas into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her face. Reverend Pierce cleared his throat, his own voice thick. Well, I don't think I can top that for an opening, so let's get these two married before we all turn into puddles. The ceremony was short and sweet. Jackson's hands shook when he slipped the ring on Sarah's finger. Sarah's voice broke when she said her vows. Emma cried happy tears. Thomas hummed his song softly throughout. When the Reverend finally said, "You may kiss your bride," Jackson pulled Sarah close and kissed her like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. They finally did. The celebration afterward was loud and joyful. Martha's cake was perfect. Caleb told embarrassing stories about Jackson as a boy. Emma danced with anyone who'd partner her. Thomas fell asleep in Jackson's arms, halfway through still humming. As the sun set and people started heading home, Jackson stood on his porch with his new wife tucked under his arm, watching their children play in the last light of day. "You ever wonder if we're moving too fast?" Sarah asked quietly. "Every day." "But you don't regret it?" Jackson looked down at her, at this woman who'd appeared in a blizzard and stolen his frozen heart. "Not for a second. Even though I come with baggage, 2 children who aren't yours, a past full of pain. Sarah, those children are mine. The moment Emma called me Papa, they became mine. The moment Thomas hummed Catherine's song, they became mine." He turned her to face him. "And you were mine from the second you knocked on my barn door and asked for shelter." "That's not how it works." "That's exactly how it works, at least for us." Sarah smiled, standing on her toes to kiss him. "What did I do to deserve you? Same thing I did to deserve you. Survived. Kept going when it would have been easier to give up. Loved those children enough to risk everything. Think we'll make it. Think we can build something real here." Jackson looked at his ranch, at the house that had been too empty for too long, now filled with laughter and life and love. "Yeah," he said. "I think we will." That night, after the children were asleep, Jackson and Sarah sat by the fire in comfortable silence. Sarah's head rested on his shoulder, her hand in his. "Tell me about Catherine," she said quietly. Jackson stiffened. "Why?" "Because she's part of you, part of this house, part of what made you the man I love." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I'm not jealous of her, Jackson. I'm grateful to her. For loving you. For sending Thomas to find us. For making room for me in your heart." Jackson was quiet for a long time. Then he started talking. About meeting Catherine at a church social when they were both 17. About their long courtship because her father didn't approve. About finally getting married and building this ranch together. About the 12 years they tried for a baby. About her joy when she finally got pregnant. About the day he got the message that she'd gone into labor early and he'd been 3 days away chasing down stolen cattle. About riding hell for leather to get home and arriving too late. About holding Lily's perfect, tiny, cold body and wishing he could trade places with her. About 3 years of guilt and grief and slowly dying inside. "I thought that was it," he said, his voice raw. "Thought I'd used up my chance at happiness. That God had given me something beautiful and I'd wasted it by not being there when it mattered." "You didn't waste anything," Sarah said fiercely. "You were doing your job, providing for your family. You couldn't have known. That's what Caleb says, what the Reverend says, but knowing it here," he tapped his head, "and believing it here," he pressed his fist to his chest. "Those are different things. And now, do you believe it now?" Jackson looked at her, at this fierce, beautiful, broken woman who'd become his wife. "I'm starting to. Because if I hadn't lost Catherine, I wouldn't have been here when you knocked. Wouldn't have been the kind of man who understood running from pain. Wouldn't have recognized the look in your eyes because I'd seen it in my own mirror for 3 years. So you think it's all connected? Catherine's death, my running, Thomas's dreams. I think, Jackson pulled her closer. I think sometimes God breaks us so he can put us back together stronger. Different. Better. I think he took Catherine home because her work here was done. And I think he sent you to finish what she started. What did she start? Teaching me how to love, how to be a father, how to build a family. He kissed the top of her head. Catherine planted the seeds. You're helping them grow. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then, I like that. The idea that we're both just continuing something beautiful. That's all life is, really. Continuing what the people before us started. Making it a little better if we can. Passing it on to the people who come after. Think we'll have more children? After Emma and Thomas. Jackson's heart skipped. You want more? Maybe, someday, if God wills it. She looked up at him. Would you want that? I'd want anything that makes you happy. That's not an answer. Jackson thought about it. Really thought about it. About a house full of children. About Thomas and Emma having siblings. About Sarah round with his child glowing and beautiful. Yeah, he said softly. Yeah, I'd want that. Sarah smiled and kissed him. Good, because I think Emma and Thomas would love some brothers and sisters. They sat there by the fire until the logs burned down to embers, planning a future that a week ago Jackson couldn't have imagined. Talking about expanding the ranch, maybe adding some sheep. About building a schoolhouse in town so Emma could get a proper education. About teaching Thomas to be a rancher, if that's what he wanted. About growing old together, watching their children grow, building something that would last beyond them. It was the first time in 3 years Jackson had thought about the future without pain. The first time he'd dared to hope. Later, lying in bed with Sarah curled against him, Jackson heard it again. Thomas humming in his sleep in the next room. That melody that had brought them all together. But this time, something was different. Jackson closed his eyes and listened. Really listened. And beneath Thomas's humming, he heard something else. A woman's voice, sweet and familiar, joining in the song. Catherine's voice. Not sad, not grieving, but joyful, celebrating. Thank you, Jackson whispered into the darkness. Thank you for everything. For loving me. For forgiving me. For sending them to me. The humming swelled for just a moment, then faded. And Jackson knew with absolute certainty that Catherine had said goodbye. Not an ending, but a release. Setting him free to love again without guilt. Giving her blessing to the family he was building with Sarah. He pulled his wife closer, breathed in the scent of her hair, felt her heart beating against his, and for the first time in 3 years, Jackson Mercer fell asleep without dreams of the past. Only hopes for the future. Spring came to Montana Territory like a promise kept. Jackson woke to the sound of water dripping from the eaves, the first real thaw after months of ice. Sarah was already up, moving quietly around the kitchen so as not to wake the children. He watched her from the doorway for a moment, still amazed that she was real. That this was real. You gonna stand there all morning, or you gonna help with breakfast? She asked without turning around. How'd you know I was here? Because you do the same thing every morning. Stand there looking at me like you can't believe I'm still here. Jackson moved behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, kissed the back of her neck. Can't help it. Still feels like a dream. Dreams don't make bacon this crispy. But she leaned back against him, let herself be held for just a moment before duty called. Jackson, we need to talk about the spring planting. Caleb says the North Field needs... The North Field can wait. Right now, I'm more interested in holding my wife. Sarah turned in his arms, flower on her cheek, eyes soft. We've been married 2 weeks, and you're already neglecting your ranch for me. Best 2 weeks of my life, worth neglecting everything for. Sweet talker. But she kissed him anyway, slow and sweet, until small footsteps on the stairs made them break apart. Emma appeared, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Morning, Papa. Morning, Mama." "Mama." Sarah's eyes filled with tears every time Emma said it. "Morning, sweetheart. You sleep good. I had a nice dream about Mama and Papa Bennett. They were smiling. Said they're proud of me." Emma climbed into a chair. "Is Thomas still sleeping?" "Like a rock," Jackson said. "That boy could sleep through a stampede." But as if summoned by his name, Thomas wandered in hair sticking up in all directions. He climbed straight into Jackson's lap without a word, still half asleep. "Morning, little man," Thomas just hummed in response. That same melody, but softer now. Gentler, like it was winding down after finishing its work. They ate breakfast as a family, talking about the day's chores. Emma wanted to help Sarah plant a garden. Thomas wanted to follow Jackson around like he did every day, asking endless questions about everything. Normal, domestic, beautiful. After breakfast, there was a knock at the door. Jackson tensed, still not completely past the fear of riders coming, but it was just Caleb with news. "Judge Harrison's here. Says she needs to talk to you and Sarah. Got papers that need signing." They found the judge waiting in the yard, her stern face softened slightly by the spring sunshine. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, nodding to Sarah. "Mr. Mercer, I have news about Blackwood." Sarah's hand found Jackson's squeezed tight. "He's been formally charged with murder, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The trial's set for next month in Helena. But..." The judge paused. "He's asking to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" Jackson demanded. "He'll confess to everything, every crime, every threat, every person he's hurt over the years. In exchange, he wants to avoid the rope, life in prison instead." Sarah made a small sound. "He gets to live after everything he's done." "It's not ideal," the judge admitted. "But his confession will bring justice to a dozen families. People who've been too scared to speak up. Debts that can be forgiven, property that can be returned." She looked at Sarah. "Including your father's land, his shop, everything Blackwood stole from you." "I don't want it," Sarah said immediately. "Don't want anything that belonged to him." "It didn't belong to him," Judge Harrison said gently. "It belonged to your father, your family, and now it belongs to you and the children. You can sell it, give it away, burn it to the ground for all I care, but it's yours by right." Sarah looked at Jackson, lost. "What do I do?" "Whatever you want. It's your choice." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Sell it. All of it. Use the money to start a fund for other families Blackwood hurt. People who lost everything to him." Judge Harrison smiled. "That's a fine idea, Mrs. Mercer. Very fine indeed." She pulled out a stack of papers. "Now there's one more matter. The children's guardianship. Legally, you're their sister, not their mother. And Mr. Mercer here has no legal standing at all." "What are you saying?" Jackson's voice went hard. "I'm saying we need to make it official. Adoption papers. Making you both their legal parents in the eyes of the law." The judge set the papers on the porch railing. "It's just a formality, but it protects everyone. Make sure no distant relatives can show up later claiming rights." Sarah picked up the papers with shaking hands. "This makes them really ours forever. Forever and legal. All you need to do is sign." Jackson found a pen. Sarah signed first, her hand trembling so badly the signature was barely legible. Then Jackson signed his own hand, not much steadier. "There," Judge Harrison said, witnessing both signatures. "Done. Emma and Thomas Mercer. Official as of today." Sarah burst into tears. Jackson pulled her close, feeling his own eyes burn. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you, Your Honor. Thank me by raising those children right, by being the family they deserve." The judge tipped her hat. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have a long ride back to Helena. and a murdering loan shark to put away for the rest of his miserable life. After she left, Sarah and Jackson just held each other, the adoption papers clutched between them. "They're ours," Sarah whispered. "Really ours. They were always ours. This just makes it legal." "I can't believe it. After everything, after running and hiding and being so scared?" Her voice broke. "We have a family, a real family." "Yeah, we do." They told the children that afternoon. Emma cried and hugged them both. Thomas just nodded like he'd known all along. "Does this mean my name is Thomas Mercer now?" he asked. "If you want it to be," Jackson said. Thomas considered this seriously. "I liked being Thomas Bennett. That was Papa's name. But I like being Thomas Mercer too. That's your name." He looked between them. "Can I be both?" "Sure you can, son. Thomas Bennett Mercer. How's that sound?" The boy's face lit up. "I like it. It's got both my papas in it." Jackson had to turn away, overcome. Sarah's hand found his back, rubbed gentle circles. "You okay?" she murmured. "Yeah, just—" He cleared his throat. "Never thought I'd be a papa. After Lily died, I thought that chance was gone forever. Life's funny that way. Takes things away and gives them back in forms we don't expect. Is that what you are? What I didn't expect." Sarah moved in front of him, cupped his face in her hands. "I'm what you needed, just like you're what I needed, just like these children needed both of us." She kissed him softly. "We're all second chances for each other." That night, Jackson lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sarah curled against his side, fast asleep. His mind was too full for rest. Too much had happened. Too much had changed. 3 months ago, he'd been a dead man walking. Now he had a wife, 2 children, a future that stretched out bright and full of possibility. It should have felt like betraying Catherine. Should have felt like replacing her. But it didn't. It felt like honoring her. Like taking the love she'd taught him and multiplying it. Like proving that her life, short as it was, had mattered, had changed him, had made him the kind of man who could open his door to strangers in a blizzard and find his salvation. "Thank you," he whispered to whatever force had brought them together. God, fate, Catherine's ghost, he didn't know. Didn't matter. "Thank you for giving me another chance." The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Jackson taught Thomas how to care for the horses, how to muck stalls, how to check fence lines. The boy soaked up every word, eager and quick to learn. Emma helped Sarah plant a garden, turning the frozen earth and dreaming about vegetables that would grow come summer. She had her mother's green thumb, Sarah said. Could make anything grow. Caleb watched it all with approval, though he grumbled about Jackson going soft. "Never seen you smile this much," the old foreman said one morning while they worked on fixing the barn roof. "It's unsettling." "Get used to it, old man. This is the new me." The new you sings while he works. The old you just grunted and looked miserable. The old me was miserable. And the new you... Jackson looked across the yard where Sarah was hanging laundry, Emma chattering beside her while Thomas chased a chicken. His family. His life. "The new me is happy," he said simply. "Didn't think that was possible anymore. But here we are." Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then, "Catherine would approve, you know. Of Sarah. Of the children. Of you being happy again." "You think so?" "I know so. Catherine loved you something fierce. And people who love that hard, they want the people they leave behind to keep living, keep loving, keep finding joy." Caleb hammered a nail with more force than necessary. "She wouldn't want you dead inside for the rest of your life." That's what Thomas says she told him, in his dreams. "Smart woman, your first wife. Smart boy, your son." Caleb paused. "Feels right calling him your son." Jackson didn't even have to think about it. Feels more right than anything ever has. That Sunday they went to church as a family for the first time. Sarah had been nervous about it, worried about gossip and judgment, but Reverend Pierce welcomed them warmly, and most of the congregation followed suit. Most, but not all. After the service, a woman Jackson vaguely recognized cornered Sarah by the church steps. "Mighty quick marriage," the woman said, voice dripping false sweetness. "Barely knew each other a month and already playing house." Sarah's spine went straight. "We're not playing anything, ma'am. We're building a life. With another woman's husband, in another woman's house, raising children that aren't yours." The woman sniffed. "Some might say that's disrespectful to the dead." Jackson stepped forward, but Sarah held up a hand, stopping him. "You're right," Sarah said quietly. "They aren't my children by blood, but they're mine by love, by choice, by legal adoption as of 2 weeks ago. And this house." She looked at it, at the home they were making together. This house was empty and dying. Now it's full of life again. I think that honors the woman who designed it better than letting it rot. "Well, I never—" "No, ma'am, I don't think you have. Never been desperate enough to run into a blizzard with 2 starving children. Never been brave enough to rebuild after losing everything. Never been blessed enough to find love twice." Sarah's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "So maybe you should think real hard before judging things you don't understand." The woman sputtered and walked away. Jackson stared at his wife in awe. "That was too much." Sarah bit her lip. "I shouldn't have said all that. Now people will talk." "Let them talk. You were magnificent." "I was rude. You were honest. There's a difference." Jackson pulled her close, not caring who saw. "And you're right. This house was dying. You brought it back to life." Emma tugged on Sarah's skirt. "Mama, what's disrespectful to the dead mean?" "It means some people don't understand that love doesn't run out," Sarah said gently. "That there's always enough for everyone who needs it." "Oh." Emma considered this. "That lady seems sad. Maybe she doesn't have enough love." Out of the mouths of babes, Jackson thought. "Maybe you're right, sweetheart. Maybe she doesn't." They walked home as a family. Thomas between them, holding both their hands, Emma skipping ahead, Caleb following behind, grumbling about missing his Sunday nap. It was perfect. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a pencil and paper writing. "What are you working on?" Jackson asked. "A letter, to my aunt in Idaho." Jackson felt a chill. "The one you were supposedly headed to when the storm hit?" "She's real. I wasn't lying about that. Just lying about going to find her." Sarah didn't look up from her writing. "We haven't spoken in years. Not since Mama died. But she should know what happened to Papa. Should know I'm safe. That the children are safe." "You gonna tell her about me?" "About us. About you and the children, and this beautiful life we're building." Now she did look up, eyes soft. "About how sometimes miracles come in the form of frozen ranchers with broken hearts." Jackson moved behind her, read over her shoulder. The letter was simple and honest, explaining everything that had happened. The running, the fear, the blizzard, the knock on the barn door, the wedding, the adoption, the love that had bloomed in the middle of winter. "She'll think you're crazy," Jackson said. "Marrying a man you just met." "Maybe. But she'll also know I'm happy. For the first time since Mama died, I'm truly happy." Sarah turned in her chair, pulled Jackson down for a kiss. "That's worth people thinking I'm crazy." "You are crazy. Crazy for agreeing to marry me. Crazy for you. There's a difference." They sat together in comfortable silence, Sarah finishing her letter while Jackson whittled a small horse for Thomas. The fire crackled. Outside, spring peepers sang their first songs of the season. This, Jackson thought. This is what happiness feels like. Not loud or dramatic, just quiet and steady and real. The sound of a child crying shattered the peace. They both rushed to the children's room to find Thomas sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face. "What's wrong, baby?" Sarah gathered him into her arms. "Bad dream. The lady came back." Thomas sobbed. But she was different. She was saying goodbye. Jackson's heart clenched. Catherine. Thomas nodded against Sarah's shoulder. She said she has to go away now, that I won't see her anymore. I asked her why, and she said... His voice broke. She said her job is done, that you don't need her anymore, that I have a real mama now. Sarah rocked him, tears in her own eyes. Oh, sweetheart. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you. It means she trusts me to take care of you. But I don't want her to go. She was my friend. She sang to me when I was scared. Jackson sat on the bed, pulled both of them close. Thomas, listen to me. The Lady Catherine, she's not leaving because she doesn't care. She's leaving because she does care. Because she knows you're safe now. Happy now. Home now. But I'll miss her. I know, son. I miss her too, every day. But you know what? Jackson tilted the boy's chin up, made him meet his eyes. She lives on in that song she taught you, in the love she helped us find, in this family she brought together. She's not really gone, she's just... He searched for the right words. She's just become part of everything good in our lives. Thomas thought about this, his tears slowing. Like how Papa Bennett is gone, but I still feel him when I'm being brave. Exactly like that. And I can still hum the song, anytime you want. That song is yours now. A gift from her to you, to all of us. Thomas nodded slowly, accepting this. Okay, but Papa Jackson. Yeah, son. Will you stay until I fall back asleep? Both of you. Sarah and Jackson exchanged a glance. Of course we will, Sarah said. We're not going anywhere. They lay down on either side of Thomas, the boy between them. Emma stirred in the other bed, mumbled something, then settled back into sleep. Thomas started humming, soft and low and sad at first. But gradually, the melody shifted, became lighter, happier. Like he was saying thank you and goodbye all at once. Jackson reached across the boy, found Sarah's hand, laced their fingers together. This was their family now, built on loss and healing and impossible coincidences. Built on a song that connected the living and the dead. Built on love that refused to die even in the coldest winter. And as Thomas's humming finally faded into soft breathing, as Sarah's hand squeezed Jackson's one more time before she too drifted off. Jackson felt something settle deep in his soul. Peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. With exactly the people you're supposed to be with, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. He closed his eyes and listened. Really listened. No ghost voices, no phantom songs. No messages from beyond. Just the breathing of his children. The warmth of his wife. The sound of spring rain starting to fall outside. The living. The present. The future. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Jackson Mercer fell asleep in his children's room, holding his wife's hand across their son's sleeping form, and dreamed not of the past, but of the tomorrow they would build together. When morning came, Thomas woke before anyone else. He slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake his parents who'd stayed the whole night. He went to the window and looked out at the ranch, at the melting snow and the first hints of green pushing through the earth. Thank you, he whispered to the sky. Thank you for the song. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for giving me a family. The wind whispered back, gentle and warm. And though Thomas would never hear Catherine's voice again, he knew with the certainty only a child can have that she heard him, that she was smiling, that wherever she was happy knowing the people she loved were happy too. He started to hum the melody one more time, but this time it wasn't sad. It wasn't even wistful. It was joyful. A celebration of love that never dies, that just transforms, that finds new ways to bloom even in the frozen ground. Thomas hummed until the sun came up, painting the Montana sky in shades of gold and promise. And somewhere in that space between memory and miracle, a woman with yellow hair smiled, and finally let go, knowing her work was complete. The song would live on. The love would live on. And that was all that mattered. By the time summer arrived, the ranch had transformed into something Jackson barely recognized. Sarah's garden flourished with vegetables and herbs. Emma tended it daily, talking to the plants like they were old friends. The fence lines were mended. The barn had a fresh coat of paint. And everywhere Jackson looked, he saw life where there'd been only emptiness before. But the biggest change wasn't visible. It was the sound of laughter filling rooms that had been silent too long. The smell of Sarah's cooking drifting through open windows. The sight of muddy boot prints tracking across floors that had been too clean because no one had lived in them. "You're staring again," Sarah said, catching him watching her hang laundry. "Can't help it. You say that every time." "Mean it every time." Jackson moved closer, took a wet sheet from her hands. "Let me help. You've got your own work to do. Rather do this. With you." They worked side by side, the easy partnership they'd developed over the past months. Sarah would hand him sheets, he'd hang them. No words needed. Just presence. "Got a letter from my aunt yesterday," Sarah said after a while. Jackson went still. "Yeah, what did she say?" "She wants to visit. Meet you and the children. See for herself that I'm not being held against my will by some cattle rustler." Sarah smiled. "Her words, not mine." "When's she coming?" "Next month, if that's all right with you." "Sarah, this is your home too. You don't need my permission for family to visit." "I know, but I wanted to ask anyway." She paused, a wet pillowcase in her hands. "Jackson, what if she doesn't approve? What if she thinks we move too fast, thinks I'm making a mistake?" "Are you making a mistake?" "No. God, no. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me." "Then that's all that matters." Jackson cupped her face. "Let her come. Let her see how happy you are, how loved these children are, how we built something real here." Sarah leaned into his touch. "When did you get so wise?" "About the time a desperate woman knocked on my barn door and saved my life." "I didn't save you." "Yeah, you did." Jackson kissed her forehead. "Every single day you save me." Thomas came running around the corner of the house, covered head to toe in mud, Emma chasing after him, shrieking about her clean dress. "Thomas Bennett Mercer!" Sarah's voice carried across the yard. "What did you do?" The boy skidded to a stop, eyes wide with guilt and mischief. "I found a puddle, and decided to become one with it, apparently." "It was a really good puddle, Mama." Jackson bit back a laugh. Sarah shot him a look that said, "Don't you dare encourage this." "Bath. Now. And if you track mud through my clean house, you'll be sleeping in the barn." "Can I really sleep in the barn?" Thomas perked up. "Like an adventure." "No, you cannot sleep in the barn." But Sarah was fighting a smile now. "Go on, get cleaned up. And Emma, stop shrieking. Your dress will wash." After the children ran off, Sarah turned to Jackson. "You think I'm too soft on them?" "I think you're exactly what they need. Firm when necessary. Gentle the rest of the time. Perfect balance. They're getting spoiled. Too much happiness after too much pain. I worry it'll make them weak." Jackson pulled her close. "Happiness doesn't make people weak. It makes them strong enough to face whatever comes next. Those children survived hell, Sarah. They earned every bit of joy we can give them." That night at dinner, Emma announced she wanted to learn to read better. "I can read some," she said, pushing carrots around her plate. "But Miss Sarah's books have big words I don't know. I want to read them all." "We'll practice every day," Sarah promised. "An hour after chores." "Can Thomas learn too?" "I'm too little," Thomas protested. "You're never too little to learn," Jackson said. "Your sister's right. Education matters, especially out here where—" He stopped, thought about how to say it. where being smart can save your life as much as being strong. Papa Jackson's right, Emma said solemnly. Mama Bennett always said knowledge is power, that nobody can take it away from you once you have it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She still cried whenever the children talked about their parents. Happy tears, she said, because they remembered, because love didn't die just because people did. After dinner, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Thomas climbed into Jackson's lap without asking his usual spot. Emma leaned against Sarah's shoulder. "Tell us about when you were little, Papa," Emma said, "before you met Mama Catherine." Jackson had gotten better at talking about Catherine. Didn't hurt quite as much anymore. Sarah had helped with that. Made it safe to remember without drowning in grief. "Well," he began. "I was about Thomas's age when my papa started teaching me to ride. Had this old mare named Butter because she was yellow as butter and twice as soft." "Did you fall off?" Thomas asked. "About 100 times. Your grandfather would just pick me up, dust me off, put me back on. Said falling was part of learning. The important thing was getting back up." "Is that why you never give up?" Emma's voice was soft. "Even when bad things happen." Jackson looked at Sarah, at the life they'd built from broken pieces. "Yeah, sweetheart. That's exactly why. Because the only real failure is not getting back up." Later, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Jackson sat by the fire. She was mending one of Thomas's shirts that he'd torn climbing a tree. Jackson was reading a week-old newspaper Caleb had brought from town. "Says here Blackwood's trial is next week," Jackson said. Sarah's hands stilled on the fabric. "Are we going? Do you want to?" She was quiet for a long time. "Part of me wants to see him locked away, to know for certain he can't hurt us anymore. But another part," she set down the mending, "another part wants to forget he ever existed, move on completely. We don't have to go. Judge Harrison will send word when it's done. But the families he hurt, the people testifying, shouldn't we support them?" Jackson set down the paper, moved to sit beside her. "Sarah, you don't owe those people anything. You survived. You protected your siblings. You built a new life. That's enough." "Is it though, if I don't testify, if I don't face him?" "Then you're choosing peace over revenge. There's no shame in that." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "I hate that he still has this power over me. That even now, locked up and helpless, the thought of him makes me shake. That'll fade. Give it time. How much time did it take you to stop feeling Catherine's ghost everywhere?" Jackson thought about it, really thought. Honestly, it wasn't about time. It was about you. About these children. About filling the empty spaces with new love instead of trying to forget the old love. He lifted her hand, kissed her palm. "Catherine will always be part of me, but she doesn't haunt me anymore. She lives in the good parts. The memories that make me smile instead of hurt. Think I'll get there. With my father. With everything Blackwood did. I know you will, because you're the strongest person I've ever met." Sarah laughed, broken and beautiful. "I don't feel strong. I feel tired and scared, and like I'm constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop." "That's what strength looks like, Sarah. Being scared and tired and doing it anyway. Getting up every morning and choosing joy even when grief is easier. Loving these children even when it hurts to remember what you lost." He turned her face to his. "You're a warrior. Don't ever forget that." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A wagon rolled up the drive carrying a woman Jackson had never seen before and 3 young children. Sarah came out of the house wiping her hands on her apron and stopped dead. "Aunt Margaret." The woman climbed down from the wagon, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd traveled hard and long. She was maybe 50, with steel gray hair and Sarah's same stubborn chin. "Surprise?" she said, voice gruff with emotion. "Got your letter and decided waiting a month was too long. Had to see for myself that my girl was really safe." Sarah ran to her, threw herself into her aunt's arms, and sobbed like a child. Jackson hung back, giving them space. But Thomas and Emma had come out to investigate, curious about the strangers. "Who's that?" Emma whispered. "Your aunt. Your mama's mother's sister." "We have more family." Thomas's eyes were wide. "Looks like it, son. Looks like it." Eventually, Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Aunt Margaret, this is Jackson, my husband, and these are the children, Emma and Thomas." Margaret studied Jackson with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "So you're the man who married my niece after knowing her all of 3 weeks?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're treating her right, treating the children right?" "Doing my best, ma'am." "Better be doing more than your best." But there was no real heat in it. Margaret turned to the children. "And these are my sister's grandchildren. Lord, you look just like Mary did at that age." Emma stepped forward, brave despite her uncertainty. "Did you know our Mama Mary?" "Knew her. I helped raise her." Margaret's voice softened. "She was my favorite sister, and she'd be so proud of you both, so very proud." The children from the wagon had climbed down now, 2 boys and a girl ranging from maybe 8 to 12. "These are my children," Margaret said. "Your cousins, James Robert and little Mary, named after my sister." Emma's face lit up. "We have cousins." "Lots of them, and aunts and uncles and family all over Idaho." Margaret looked at Sarah. "You're not alone anymore, girl. Never were. I just didn't know how bad things had gotten until your letter arrived. I'm sorry I didn't write sooner. I was running for your life, I know, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to help." Margaret's jaw clenched. "But I'm here now. And if that bastard Blackwood somehow gets out of prison, he'll have to go through me first." Jackson liked her immediately. They spent the day showing Margaret around the ranch, introducing her to Caleb and Martha, telling the story of how they'd met. Margaret listened to all of it, asked pointed questions, and watched Jackson with those sharp eyes. That evening, after the children were all in bed, exhausted from playing with their newfound cousins, Margaret cornered Jackson on the porch. "Walk with me," she said, not a request. They walked to the fence line in silence. Finally, Margaret spoke. "My niece loves you. I can see it in how she looks at you, how she moves around you like you're the center of her world. I love her too, ma'am." "I'm sure you do, but love isn't always enough. I loved my husband, and he still left me with 3 children to raise alone when the bottle killed him." Jackson stayed quiet, sensing there was more. "What I need to know," Margaret continued, "is if you're going to stay. If when things get hard, when the honeymoon phase wears off, you're going to remember that you chose this, chose her, chose those children." "I'll stay," Jackson said simply. "No matter what comes, I'll stay. Because you love her. Because she's my wife. Because those children are mine. Because I made promises I intend to keep." He met Margaret's eyes. "But also, yeah. Because I love her more than I thought possible to love anyone after Catherine died." Margaret studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. That's what I needed to hear. Do I have your approval then? You have my cautious optimism. Check back in a year, and we'll see about approval." But she smiled when she said it. "Now tell me about this song my grandnephew keeps humming." Sarah's letter mentioned it, but didn't explain. So Jackson told her. About Catherine's lullaby. About Thomas knowing it impossibly. About the dreams, and the messages, and the miracle of it all. Margaret listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "You believe it?" she finally asked. "That your dead wife sent them to you?" "I believe something brought us together. Whether it was God or Catherine or just dumb luck, I don't know. But yeah, I believe it was meant to be. My sister Mary believed in that kind of thing. Signs and messages and divine providence." Margaret's voice was soft. She used to say that love was the only thing strong enough to cross between worlds, that it never really died, just changed forms. You think she's right? I think my sister died giving birth to that boy, and somehow he still knows she loved him. That's miracle enough for me. She turned back toward the house. Come on, let's get back before Sarah thinks I'm interrogating you. Weren't you? Of course I was. But she doesn't need to know how thoroughly. The week passed too quickly. Margaret and her children stayed in the spare rooms, and the house was full of noise and laughter and chaos. Emma thrived having other children to play with. Thomas attached himself to his cousin James, following the older boy everywhere. Sarah bloomed under her aunt's approval, relaxed in a way Jackson had never seen. This is what family looks like, she said one night watching the children play after dinner. What I always wanted for them, for us. We can visit Idaho, Jackson offered. Take the children to meet the rest of your family. You'd do that. Leave the ranch. Sarah, I'd do anything for you. You know that by now. She kissed him soft and sweet. I do know. And I love you for it. But this is home now. Here. With you. Let them come to us instead. When it was time for Margaret to leave, there were tears all around. The children begged their cousins to stay. Margaret made Sarah promise to write more often, and she pulled Jackson aside one last time. You're a good man, Jackson Mercer. Better than my niece probably deserves, but don't tell her I said that. Your secret's safe. Take care of them, all three of them, and any more that come along. She glanced at Sarah meaningfully. Something tells me this family's going to keep growing. After they left, the house felt too quiet. Emma moped for a day. Thomas kept asking when they could see their cousins again. But slowly, life returned to its new normal. And then one morning, about 2 weeks later, Sarah woke him before dawn. Jackson, she whispered, shaking his shoulder. Jackson, wake up. He bolted upright, reaching for the gun he kept by the bed. What's wrong? The children? The children are fine, but Jackson... Her voice broke. I think I'm pregnant. Time stopped. Jackson stared at her, unable to process the words. You think or you know? I'm late, and I've been sick every morning for a week. And Martha said... Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm pregnant, Jackson. We're going to have a baby. He pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she squeaked in protest. A baby. Our baby. Are you happy I know we didn't plan? This didn't talk about it yet? Happy, Sarah. He couldn't find words big enough. I never thought I'd get this chance again. After Lily died, I thought that was it. No children, no family. Just emptiness. He cupped her face, kissed her trembling lips. You've given me everything. Everything I thought I'd lost forever. Sarah laughed through her tears. We don't know for sure yet. Could be wrong. Could be. You're not wrong. I can see it in your face. Feel it in my bones. Jackson placed his hand on her still flat stomach. There's a baby in there. Our baby. They lay together in the pre-dawn darkness, talking in whispers about the future. About what to name the baby. About how to tell Emma and Thomas. About preparing the nursery that had stood empty for 3 years. Should we use Lily's room? Sarah asked hesitantly. Or would that be too painful? Jackson thought about it. About the room he'd finally been able to enter without breaking down. About the crib and the rocking horse, and all the dreams that had died there. Yeah, he said softly. We should use it. That's what it was built for. What Catherine designed it for. She'd want it used, not preserved like a shrine. You're sure? I'm sure. They told the children at breakfast. Emma squealed and immediately started planning all the things she'd teach the baby. Thomas just nodded seriously. The lady said this would happen, he said. Everyone went quiet. What lady, son? Jackson asked, though he already knew. The lady with the yellow hair. In my last dream before she left, she said you and Mama Sarah would have a baby, said that's why she could leave, because the song would keep going. Thomas smiled. She said to tell you she's happy for you. Sarah burst into tears. Jackson pulled her close, his own eyes burning. Thank you, he whispered to the air, to Catherine's memory, to whatever force had orchestrated all of this. Thank you for everything. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Sarah glowed with health and happiness. Emma fussed over her constantly. Thomas talked to her belly, telling the baby stories about the ranch. And Jackson watched it all with wonder, unable to believe this was his life now. Summer faded into fall. The harvest came in strong. Caleb taught Thomas to rope. Emma learned to read full sentences. And Sarah's belly grew round and full of promise. One evening in late October, Jackson found her in Lily's room. She'd spent weeks cleaning it, painting the walls a soft green, hanging new curtains. The crib was ready, the rocking horse polished to a shine. "What are you doing?" he asked, finding her standing at the window. "Just thinking. About Catherine. About how she never got to use this room, never got to hold her baby." Sarah turned to him, her hand on her stomach. "Jackson, what if something goes wrong? What if I can't?" "Don't." He crossed to her, took her hands. "Don't borrow trouble. You're healthy. The baby's strong. Everything's going to be fine." "You can't know that." "No. But I can believe it. Can choose hope over fear. Can trust that we've been through the fire and come out stronger." He pulled her close, felt their child kick between them. "This baby is a gift, Sarah. From Catherine. From your parents. From God. And we're going to meet them and love them and raise them right." "Promise me something," Sarah whispered. "Anything. Promise me that if something happens to me, you'll remember this feeling, this hope, that you won't let grief win again." "Sarah." "Promise me, Jackson." He pulled back, looked into her eyes. "Nothing's going to happen to you. But if it did, if the worst happened, I promise I wouldn't forget how to live. Because you taught me that. You and Emma and Thomas. You taught me that love is stronger than grief, that life goes on, that joy is worth the risk of pain." She kissed him, then deep and fierce and full of love. And when their baby was born 3 months later on a cold January morning, Sarah screaming and cursing and gripping Jackson's hand hard enough to break bones, he fell in love all over again. With his wife who'd survived the impossible to bring their child safely into the world. With his daughter tiny and perfect and wailing with outrage at the cold. With his life full and messy and beautiful beyond measure. They named her Hope. Hope Catherine Mercer, because she was both. The hope for their future and the honor to their past. Emma and Thomas crept in to meet their new sister, eyes wide with wonder. "She's so small," Emma whispered. "You were that small once," Sarah said, exhausted but glowing. Thomas leaned close, studying the baby with serious eyes. Then he started to hum. That melody. Catherine's melody. The song that had brought them all together. And baby Hope stopped crying. Turned her head toward the sound. Peaceful and calm. "She likes it," Thomas said, delighted. "Of course she does." Jackson said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's her song, all of ours." That night with Sarah and the baby sleeping, Jackson sat in the rocking chair holding Hope. Emma and Thomas were curled on the floor nearby, refusing to leave their new sister. This was everything he'd lost, everything he'd thought gone forever. Family, love, hope. All of it returned to him through a knock on a barn door in the middle of a blizzard. Through a desperate woman and 2 broken children. Through a song that connected the living and the dead. Through love that refused to die even in the darkest winter. Jackson looked down at his daughter, at this tiny life he'd helped create. at the future stretching out before them bright and full of possibility. "Thank you," he whispered one last time. To Catherine, to whatever force had guided them here, to the love that had survived everything, and then he let go of the past completely, embraced the present, chose the future. Because that's what the song had always been about. Not grief, not loss, but love. Love that transcends death, that builds bridges between broken hearts, that takes what's shattered and makes it whole again. Love that knocks on barn doors in blizzards and changes everything. Love that saves us, even when we've given up on being saved. Jackson Mercer had been dead for 3 years. But on that January night, holding his newborn daughter while his wife slept and his children dreamed nearby, he was more alive than he'd ever been. And that made all the difference.